The sky above Prime had not been blue for 23 days. It burned orange and red now, choked with smoke and ash from the cities that had once touched the clouds. From orbit, the warships fired their weapons without rest. Each blast turned another piece of the beautiful world into ruin. High Arbiter stood at the window of the last command bunker. Her 4 arms hung at her sides. Her silver skin, once bright and smooth, looked gray and tired. She was old, even by the long standards of her people. She had led the conquered through 60 years of peace and growth. Now she watched everything burn. Behind her, the war room buzzed with desperate activity. Officers shouted numbers and coordinates. Screens showed red warnings everywhere. The planet's defense grid had failed 2 days ago. The orbital stations were all destroyed. There was nothing left between the people and death except a handful of broken ships. Fleet Commander walked to her side. He was young for his rank, but war had aged him quickly. A fresh scar ran across his face from a battle 3 days ago. His uniform was torn and dirty. He had not slept in 40 hours. "High Arbiter," he said quietly, "I have the final count." Did not turn from the window. "Tell me." 17 ships. That is all that remains of our fleet. His voice cracked slightly. The enemy has over 350 still operational. Our shields will fail completely within 6 hours. Closed her eyes. 17 ships. They had started with over 200, the finest fleet in their sector. They had broken them like toys. "And the civilian transports?" she asked. 42 ships are loaded with refugees. They are hiding behind the moon, but they are there. They are simply waiting. Waiting, yes, they enjoyed fear. They enjoyed watching their prey understand that there was no escape. They would let the transports run, then hunt them down one by one. It was a game to them. Finally turned. Her eyes, large and dark purple like all, met the young commander's gaze. "Has anyone answered our calls?" Looked away. That was answer enough. For 23 days, they had sent distress signals to every corner of known space. They had called upon the Galactic Concordance, the great alliance of 200 species sworn to protect each other. They had begged the Federation for ships. They had pleaded with the Collective for weapons. They had asked the merchant guilds for anything at all. Silence, that was all they received. The Galactic Concordance held emergency meetings. They debated, they discussed. They formed committees to study the situation, but no ships came. The Dominion was too powerful, they said. Intervention would be costly, they said. The political situation was complicated, they said. While they talked, they died. They sent a message, said. They expressed deep concern for our situation. They promised to raise the matter at the next council session. The next session is in 2 months. Yes. Let out a bitter laugh. It was not really a laugh at all. It was the sound of hope dying. 2 months, we have 6 hours. A communications officer approached them. She was very young, barely more than a child. Her hands shook as she held out a data pad. High Arbiter, the High Admiral is broadcasting again. He demands a response. Took the pad. The face of High Admiral filled the screen. He was, which meant he looked like something from a nightmare. His body was covered in black armor that was part shell and part metal. His eyes were compound, glittering with thousands of tiny lenses. When he spoke, his mandibles clicked together in a way that made children scream. Said in his hissing voice, "Your resistance has been entertaining, but I grow bored. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. All your people will become property of the Dominion. Your world will be harvested for resources. This is generous. I could simply kill you all. Consider my mercy." The message ended. Clenched his fists. "We cannot surrender. They do not take prisoners. They take slaves. They take biomass." Everyone in the room knew what that meant. They ate their conquered enemies. They processed them into food for their hive worlds. Surrender meant a fate worse than death. Looked around the room. She saw her people. Officers, soldiers, technicians, all of them were exhausted, all of them were afraid, but none of them wanted to give up. They would rather die fighting than become food for monsters. "Commander," she said, "prepare our remaining ships for a final defense. We will buy time for the refugee transports to run. They will not get far. No, but perhaps some will escape. Perhaps some will survive to remember us. That is all we can hope for now." Saluted and turned to give orders. Walked back to the window. Outside, another city exploded in the distance. The shockwave reached the bunker a few seconds later, making the floor shake. How many had just died? Thousands, millions. She had stopped counting days ago. She thought of all the species who had promised friendship, all the treaties signed with great ceremony, all the words about unity and protection. They meant nothing. When the darkness came, everyone hid. Everyone looked away. Everyone decided that their own safety was more important than their promises. They were alone. Turn to the communications officer. Open a channel, all frequencies, every language in the database. I want this message to reach every corner of the galaxy. The young officer worked quickly. Channel open, High Arbiter. Took a deep breath. She did not know why she was doing this. No one had answered before. No one would answer now. But she could not let her people die in silence. She could not let the galaxy pretend they did not know. "This is High Arbiter of the Conquered," she said. Her voice was steady despite everything. "Our world is dying. Our people are being slaughtered. We have called for help from every ally, every friend, every nation that ever promised us brotherhood. None have come. We are alone." She paused. Outside, another explosion lit the sky. "This message goes to anyone who can hear it, to any ship, any world, any being with the power to help. We are not asking for politics. We are not asking for treaties. We are asking for mercy. We are asking for courage. We are asking someone, anyone, to remember that we exist." Her voice finally broke. "Please, we are dying, and no one is coming to save us." She ended the transmission. The room was silent. Everyone knew it was hopeless. Everyone knew that help would not come. But somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, someone was listening. Commander stood on the bridge of the flagship Starlight's Grace. It was a proud name for a dying ship. The vessel had taken heavy damage in the last battle. Half its weapons were offline. The shields flickered like a candle in the wind, but it was all they had left. Around him, his crew worked in grim silence. They all knew they would probably die within hours, but they kept working anyway. That was what soldiers did. Stared at the tactical display. The fleet hung in orbit like a swarm of hungry insects. 362 ships. Each one was a weapon of war designed for one purpose: conquest. They had crushed 17 civilizations before they would crush 17 more after. His mind wandered as he watched the enemy ships. He thought about all the species in the galaxy, all the different peoples who had reached the stars, so many of them, so few of them willing to help. Then he remembered something strange. A meeting from years ago, before the war, before any of this nightmare began. He had been a junior officer then, assigned to escort a diplomatic party. The party had included representatives from many species. Most of them he had forgotten, but one he remembered clearly. The human. Humans were a strange species. They came from a small blue world on the far edge of the galaxy. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel about a century ago. By galactic standards, they were infants. The other species mostly ignored them. The human at that meeting had been a woman named Sarah. She was small compared to most species, soft-looking. No claws, no armor, no natural weapons at all. She had smiled politely during the whole meeting while the other diplomats talked over her and dismissed her opinions. Remembered one moment in particular. An delegate had threatened her. There were large, aggressive beings who liked to intimidate others. This one had leaned close to the human woman and said that Earth would make a nice addition to their territory someday. Sarah had not flinched. She had not looked afraid at all. She had simply smiled that strange, calm smile and said 5 words that never forgot. Humanity remembers everything. At the time had thought it was an empty threat from a weak species. Now, standing on his dying ship, he was not so sure. There had been something in her eyes, something old and cold and patient, something that did not match her soft appearance. He shook his head. It did not matter now. Humans were a minor species with a tiny fleet of primitive ships. Even if they wanted to help, they could not. No one could stand against them. His thoughts were interrupted by an alarm. "Commander, the enemy is moving." Snapped back to attention. On the display, a group of ships was breaking formation. 20 destroyers, moving toward the moon where the refugee transports were hiding. "They're starting the hunt," his tactical officer said quietly. Felt his heart sink. The transports had no weapons. They were filled with children, elderly, families, that would tear them apart like a predator playing with its food. "All ships move to intercept," ordered. He knew it was suicide. 17 ships against 20. Normally those odds might be acceptable, but his ships were damaged, tired, running on empty. They were fresh. "Commander," his communications officer said, "High Arbiter is asking for a status update." "Tell her we are engaging, tell her." He paused. What could he say? Tell her goodbye. Tell her he was sorry he could not save them. Tell her we will buy as much time as we can. The ships moved, slow, wounded but determined. They formed a line between thee and the transports. Every officer on every bridge knew they were about to die. None of them ran. On the planet below, received the message. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to God she was not sure she believed in anymore. Then something happened. The sensor officer on the Starlight's Grace made a sound. It was not a word. It was more like a gasp or a choke or a cry of confusion. Turned to look at her. She was staring at her screen with wide eyes. "What is it?" "Sir, I don't know. There's something. Something is happening in Sector 7. Sector 7 was empty space. There was nothing there. No planets, no stations, no ships, just void. "Explain," demanded. "I'm reading an energy signature, but it doesn't match anything in our database. It's not anything I've ever seen." Her voice was shaking now. "And it's massive, sir. It's really, really massive." Walked to her station. He looked at the readings himself. She was right. The energy signature was enormous, bigger than anything their sensors had ever recorded, and it was growing. "Is it a weapon, a natural phenomenon?" "No, sir, it's a ship, multiple ships. They're coming out of some kind of subspace tunnel, but the readings are all wrong. No known species uses this kind of FTL signature." On the tactical display, a new marker appeared, then another, then 10 more, then 50. "Sir," the officer whispered, "they're not in our database. The computer doesn't recognize them at all." Stared at the screen. His mind was racing. Unknown ships, unknown technology, unknown origin. In the middle of a battle for survival, something completely new was emerging from the darkness of space. "Can you identify them at all?" The officer worked frantically. Scanning. "Sir, I have a partial match. The hull composition, the basic shape, it matches one species in our records, but that's impossible." "Which species?" She looked up at him. Her face was pale. "Humans. These are human ships, but our records say humans only have a few dozen small vessels. These ships are huge, and there are so many of them." Felt something he had not felt in weeks. He did not know if it was hope or fear, maybe both. "Put them on the main screen," he ordered. The display changed. It showed the view from the ship's external cameras. In the distance, space itself seemed to be tearing open. A crack of light appeared in the void, bleeding colors that hurt to look at, and from that crack, shapes were emerging. Ships, massive ships, black as night and covered in weapons. They moved with perfect precision like a predator emerging from the shadows. The communication system crackled. A voice came through. It was speaking in perfect, but the accent was strange. The voice was calm, professional, and utterly without fear. "Vessels, this is Admiral of the United Earth Navy. We received your distress call. We are here to help. Please move your civilian ships behind our formation. We will take it from here." Could not speak. He could not move. He just stared at the screen as more and more ships emerged from the void. The humans had come. High Admiral had conquered 17 worlds. He had burned civilizations that were ancient when his species was still crawling in the mud. He had faced enemies with superior numbers, superior technology, superior everything. He had crushed them all. He had never felt fear. Until now. He stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Endless Hunger. Around him, his officers clicked their mandibles in confusion and growing panic. Their sensors were going crazy. The readings made no sense. "Report," hissed. "High Admiral, unknown vessels are emerging from subspace. Count is still rising. We have 53 confirmed. No, 61, 70. The number keeps climbing." "What species? Identify them." "We cannot, High Admiral. The ships do not match any known design. Their energy signatures are completely foreign. Our scanners cannot properly analyze them." Stared at the main display. The human ships were spreading out in perfect formation. They moved together like a single organism, each ship knowing exactly where to go without any visible communication. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. The ships themselves were unlike anything in the galaxy. They were angular, almost aggressive in their design. No curves, no elegance, just sharp edges and weapons. So many weapons. Every surface seemed to bristle with gun ports and missile tubes. And they were big. The largest human ship was easily 5 kilometers long. That was twice the size of his own flagship. According to galactic records, humans did not have ships that big. According to galactic records, humans were a primitive species barely capable of interstellar travel. The records were wrong. "High Admiral, we are being hailed. The transmission is coming from the largest human vessel." "Put it through." A human face appeared on the screen. It was a female, noted. Humans had 2 sexes, just like many species. This one had dark hair cut short and eyes that looked like polished stone. Cold, hard, patient. She wore a uniform of black and gray. On her shoulder was a symbol, a planet with wings. "Fleet," she said. Her voice was perfectly calm. "This is Admiral of the United Earth Expeditionary Fleet. You are engaged in an illegal act of aggression against a peaceful species. You have committed war crimes including bombardment of civilian targets and attacks on refugee vessels. You will cease all hostile actions immediately." Laughed. The sound was harsh and clicking. "Human, you dare to give orders to the Dominion. We have conquered half the galaxy. Your species is nothing. Insects. You have no authority here." "I am not asking for authority," replied. "I am giving you a chance. One chance. Withdraw your fleet from this system. Surrender your commanders for war crimes trial. Do this and you may leave. And if we refuse, then you will not leave at all." Should have been angry. He should have been amused at this tiny species threatening the great Dominion. Instead, he felt something cold crawl up his spine. There was something wrong about this human. She was not bluffing. She was not afraid. She spoke like someone who already knew how this would end. But had not risen to High Admiral by showing weakness. He had 360 ships. The humans had, he checked the count, 93. The numbers were in his favor. They were always in his favor. "Human," he said, clicking his mandibles in what passed for a smile. "You have made a mistake. You should have stayed hidden in your little corner of the galaxy. Now you will learn what happens to species that challenge the Dominion. Your ships will burn. Your crew will become food for our hives. And after we finish here, we will visit your Earth, yes. We will harvest every human alive." Admiral did not react. Her face did not change at all. She simply looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was even quieter than before. Humanity remembers everything, High Admiral. We remember every species that threatened us, every empire that thought us weak, every tyrant who promised to destroy us. She paused. We also remember what we did to them. Then she smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but something about it made blood run cold. "You have 60 seconds to comply," said, "starting now." Cut the transmission. He spun to face his officers. "All ships attack formation, destroy the human vessels, show them the power of the Dominion." The fleet began to move. 360 warships turned toward the human formation. Weapons charged. Fighters launched. It was an overwhelming force. Nothing could stand against it. On the bridge of the UES Thermopylae, Admiral watched the fleet approach. Around her, human officers sat at their stations with perfect calm. No one spoke. No one needed to. They had trained for this moment for decades. "Admiral," her tactical officer said, "enemy fleet is advancing. Weapons range in 40 seconds. Nodded. "All ships, confirm targeting solutions." "Confirmed, Admiral. All weapons locked." The countdown continued. 30 seconds, 20. The ships grew larger on the screens. Their weapons began to glow with charging energy. "Admiral, enemy is about to fire." Waited 5 seconds, 3, 2. Weapons free. The human fleet fired. It was not like any battle the galaxy had ever seen. Normal space combat was a long affair. Ships would exchange fire for hours, wearing down each other's shields, maneuvering for advantage. It was almost elegant. This was not elegant. This was violence on a scale that made the watching cry out in shock. The Thermopylae's main guns were that fired projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. Each shot carried enough energy to crack a moon. The first volley hit the leading ships and simply erased them. There was no explosion, no dramatic death. One moment they existed. The next moment they were expanding clouds of gas and debris. The other human ships opened fire at the same time. Missiles launched by the thousands, but these were not ordinary missiles. They were smart, adaptive, almost alive. They dodged defensive fire. They changed course to pursue fleeing targets. They worked together like pack hunters. The fleet began to die. Watched in horror as ship after ship vanished from his display. 30 ships gone in the first 10 seconds. 50 ships gone in 20 seconds. His fleet was being slaughtered, and they had not even scratched a single human vessel. "Return fire," he screamed. "All weapons fire." His ships fired everything they had. Plasma cannons, particle beams, nuclear torpedoes. A wall of destruction flew toward the human fleet. It never arrived. The human ships had point defense systems that filled space with a web of intercepting fire. Every missile, every torpedo, every beam was blocked or destroyed. It was like throwing stones at a steel wall. "Impossible," whispered. "This is impossible." On the Thermopylae, watched the battle unfold. Her face showed no emotion. This was not a fight to her. This was a mathematical equation, and she already knew the answer. Status report. Enemy losses at 40% and climbing. No damage to any UEN vessel. She nodded. "Continue firing. Disable their flagship but keep it intact. I want the High Admiral alive." "Understood, Admiral." The battle, if it could be called that, continued for another 12 minutes. When it was over, 340 ships had been destroyed. 20 had managed to flee into hyperspace. Only the flagship remained, drifting and powerless, its weapons silenced and its engines dead. Opened a channel to all frequencies. "Survivors, your fleet has been neutralized. Your High Admiral will face trial for war crimes. Those of you who escaped, deliver this message to your Dominion. They are under human protection. Any further aggression will be met with overwhelming force. Do not test us again." She closed the channel and turned to look out the viewport. Below, the still burned, but the bombardment had stopped. The nightmare was over. "Helm," she said quietly, "take us into orbit. Inform them that we are ready to assist with relief efforts." "Yes, Admiral." The human fleet moved toward the wounded planet, and across the galaxy, species that had ignored the cries for help began to realize that everything they knew about humanity was wrong. Commander had seen war. He had watched his friends die. He had fought against impossible odds. He thought he understood what battle looked like. He was wrong. What he had just witnessed was not battle. It was judgment. Though the terror of the galaxy, the species that had made entire civilizations disappear, had been broken in minutes. Minutes. Their mighty fleet, over 300 ships strong, had been crushed like insects under a boot. And the humans had not lost a single ship. Stood on his damaged bridge, surrounded by officers who could not speak. They just stared at the screens. The tactical display showed the aftermath. Debris fields where vessels had once been, the drifting hulk of the enemy flagship, and the human fleet untouched, moving toward their planet like guardians descending from the heavens. "Sir," his communications officer said, her voice was barely a whisper, "the human admiral is requesting permission to enter orbit. They want to help with rescue operations." Permission. They were asking permission. They had just destroyed the most feared fleet in the sector, and they were politely asking permission to help. "Grant it," managed to say. "Grant whatever they want." The human ships moved into position above Prime. Smaller vessels began launching from their hangars. These were not warships, realized. They were transports, medical ships, cargo carriers. The humans had brought an entire relief fleet hidden inside their battle fleet. On the planet's surface, High Arbiter watched the human vessels descend through the smoke-filled sky. She stood in the ruins of what had been the capital city. Around her, survivors emerged from shelters, looking up in amazement and fear. A human shuttle landed nearby. It was a practical thing, boxy and efficient. The doors opened, and humans emerged. They were wearing medical uniforms and carrying equipment. Without hesitation, they began moving toward the wounded who lay everywhere. One human approached. She was a young woman with kind eyes and a calm smile. She held a translation device in her hand. "High Arbiter," the young woman said. "I'm Dr. Lisa Park. We're here to help. Where are your wounded?" Could not speak for a moment. After 23 days of screaming for help and receiving only silence, a stranger was standing before her asking how to help. It broke something inside her. Tears began to fall from her purple eyes. "Everywhere," she whispered. "They are everywhere." Dr. Park nodded as if this was expected. "Then we'll start everywhere. My teams are fanning out across the planet. We've brought medical supplies, food, water, and temporary shelters. More supply ships are coming. You're not alone anymore." The word hit like a physical blow. Alone. They had been so alone, and now they were not. In orbit, Admiral coordinated the relief effort from her bridge. Reports came in constantly. Human medical teams were treating wounds. Human engineers were restoring power systems. Human ships were scanning for survivors trapped in rubble. The efficiency was remarkable. Her first officer approached. "Admiral, the flagship is secured. The High Admiral and his senior officers are in custody." "Good, have them transported to holding cells. They will stand trial on Earth." "Yes, Admiral," he paused. "The commander is requesting to speak with you. He has questions." Almost smiled. "I imagine he does. Tell him I will meet with him and the High Arbiter once the immediate relief operations are stable. They deserve answers." Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread. The Galactic Concordance received reports from their spies and scouts. The details were unbelievable at first. A human fleet appearing from nowhere. Technology that should not exist. A battle that lasted less than 15 minutes. The complete destruction of our armada. In the great halls of the Federation, leaders gathered in emergency session. They had ignored the pleas for help. They had calculated that the cost of intervention was too high. Now they calculated something else entirely. They had been wrong about humanity. "How is this possible?" demanded the High Chancellor. "Our intelligence said humans were a minor species, primitive technology, small fleet. They should not be capable of this." "Apparently our intelligence was incorrect," said his advisor quietly. "Very, very incorrect." "But where did they get this technology, these weapons, these ships?" No one had an answer. The humans had hidden their true power for decades, maybe longer. While the galaxy dismissed them as unimportant, they had been building something terrible in the darkness between stars. "What do we do now?" asked a younger minister. "If the humans decide to expand?" The thought hung in the air. If humanity could destroy a fleet that easily, they could destroy anyone. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted overnight. Every calculation, every alliance, every strategy was suddenly uncertain. In the collective, similar conversations were happening. They had threatened humanity before. They had spoken of conquering Earth. Now they wondered if those threats had been heard and remembered. Humanity remembers everything. That phrase spread across diplomatic channels like a virus. Species that had insulted humans, cheated humans, or dismissed humans began to worry. What else did humanity remember? And what would they do about it? But for now, the humans seemed focused only on helping their ships delivered supplies. Their soldiers helped dig survivors from collapsed buildings. Their doctors worked through the night saving lives. Commander eventually made his way to the planet's surface. He needed to see the humans with his own eyes. He needed to understand what was happening. He found a human officer supervising a group of soldiers who were setting up water purification equipment. The officer was a large man with dark skin and a shaved head. He looked up as approached. "Your commander," the man said. "It was not a question. I'm Captain James Wright. Your ship put up a good fight. We saw the battle data. You should be proud of your crew." Did not know what to say. Thank you, but I do not understand. Why are you here? Why did you come? You owe us nothing. We are strangers to you." Captain Wright stopped what he was doing. He looked at with an expression that was hard to read. "You called for help," he said simply. "You were dying. No one else answered." "But that is not a reason. Not a sufficient reason. War is costly. Intervention brings enemies. Your government gains nothing from this." The captain was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. "A long time ago, humanity went through some very dark times. We did terrible things to each other, genocides, wars, cruelty that would make the look gentle." He paused. "We survived, we grew, and we decided something." "What did you decide?" "We decided that never again would we stand by while innocents suffered if we had the power to help. We built our fleet not to conquer. We built it to protect, to answer the calls that no one else answers." He looked up at the smoke-filled sky. "When your High Arbiter sent that last message, we heard it, and we came." Felt something strange in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. Hope, real hope, for the first time in weeks. "You came because it was right," he said slowly. "Not because it was profitable, not because it was safe, just because it was right." Captain Wright smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "Humanity has made a lot of mistakes, Commander, but we're trying to do better. This is part of how we do better." A sound made them both look up. More human ships were descending through the atmosphere, bringing more supplies, more help, more hope. Watched them come. He did not understand humans. He did not know if anyone ever would. But in that moment he was grateful beyond words that they existed. 3 days had passed since the battle. The fires on Prime were finally dying. The smoke was beginning to clear. For the first time in almost a month, they could see patches of blue sky again. High Arbiter stood in a human shuttle as it rose from the surface. She was going to meet Admiral aboard the Thermopylae. The invitation had come that morning. The admiral said it was time to talk. The shuttle docked with the massive battleship, had seen the human vessels from a distance, but being inside one was different. Everything was efficient, practical, built for purpose. There was no decoration, no beauty, but there was something else: strength. Every wall, every door, every system spoke of a species that had learned to survive by being harder than anything that tried to destroy them. A young officer led her through the corridors. Human crew members stopped and saluted as she passed. They looked at her with respect. She wondered what they saw: a survivor, a leader, or just another alien who needed saving. The bridge of the Thermopylae was massive. Hundreds of officers sat at stations arranged in perfect rows. Giant screens showed images of the fleet, the planet, the surrounding space. And at the center of it all, looking out a vast window at the stars, stood Admiral. She turned as entered. Up close, the Admiral looked different than she had on the communications screen. Older, more tired. There were lines around her eyes that spoke of difficult decisions and long nights, but her gaze was still sharp, still calm, still impossibly steady. High Arbiter said, "Thank you for coming. I apologize for not meeting sooner. There was much to organize." "There is nothing to apologize for," replied. "Your people have saved millions of lives in the last 3 days. I should be apologizing that I cannot offer you anything in return." Shook her head. "We did not come for payment. Please sit. You have questions. I will answer what I can." They sat in comfortable chairs near the window. Below them, Prime slowly rotated. It was still wounded, but it was alive. Asked the question that had burned in her mind since the battle. "Why? Your species is young. You are far from here. You had nothing to gain and everything to risk. Why did you come?" Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. "Let me tell you about human history, High Arbiter. It is not a pleasant story. For most of our existence, we were divided. Nations against nations. Religions against religions. Races against races. We invented new ways to kill each other with every generation." She paused. "We had events we called genocides. Entire peoples erased because of their beliefs, their blood, their existence. Millions killed in organized slaughter. We had wars that consumed continents. We built weapons that could destroy our entire world, and we came close to using them more than once." Listened in silence. She had heard fragments of human history before, but always dismissed them as exaggeration. "There was a moment," continued, "when we almost ended ourselves. We stood at the edge of extinction, not from any external enemy but from our own hatred, our own fear, our own cruelty." "How did you survive?" "We chose to. It was not easy. It took generations. But eventually enough humans decided that we had to be better, that we could not keep destroying each other, that we needed to look outward to the stars instead of inward at our differences. Looked out at the stars. We unified, slowly, painfully, but truly. And when we reached space and found other species, we saw something that disturbed us. We saw the same patterns, the same empires, the same tyrannies, the same suffering. So you decided to intervene." "Not exactly. We decided to prepare. We knew that someday, somewhere, someone would cry for help and no one would answer. We knew because we had studied history. We had seen it happen before, on our own world. Entire peoples screaming for salvation while others looked away." She turned to face directly. "We built our fleet in secret. We developed technology in hidden stations. We watched and waited, and when your message came, we moved." Felt tears threatening again. She held them back. "But you could not save everyone. You could not answer every call." "No, we cannot, but we can answer some. And every life saved is a victory against the darkness." His voice hardened slightly. "Humanity has done terrible things. We carry that weight forever. This is how we try to balance the scales, not through words, through action." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, human ships moved in careful patterns, still delivering supplies to the planet below. Finally, asked the question that the entire galaxy wanted answered. What do you want from us? What do you expect in return for this salvation? Smiled. It was the first time had seen her smile. It changed her face, made her look younger, warmer. Nothing, we want nothing from you. That is impossible. No one does something for nothing. Humanity does, or at least we try to, leaned forward. But if you insist on giving us something, then give us this. Remember what happened here. Remember that when you called for help, allies who swore oaths to protect you stayed silent. And remember that strangers who owed you nothing came anyway. She stood and walked to the window. Someday, High Arbiter, your people will recover. You will rebuild your fleet. You will become strong again. And someday, somewhere, another species will cry for help. Maybe it will be far away. Maybe it will be inconvenient. Maybe there will be 100 reasons to stay silent. She turned back to, when that day comes, I hope you will remember us, and I hope you will choose to answer. Stood as well, she understood now. This was not charity. This was not politics. This was a lesson. Humanity was teaching the galaxy what it meant to truly help others. I will remember, she said. My people will remember. For as long as they exist, we will tell the story of the humans who came from the silence. Nodded, that is all we ask. They stood together at the window, looking down at the wounded world that was slowly beginning to heal. What will you do now? Asked. Will you stay? Will you become part of galactic politics? No, we will leave when your relief situation is stable, probably within a week. Our fleet will return to human space. But the galaxy knows about you now. Others will come. They will want your technology, your alliance, your power. Smile returned, but this time it was colder. Let them come. Humanity does not seek war. We do not want to conquer anyone, but we do not run from threats either. She looked at with those steady, unreadable eyes. Tell the galaxy this. Humanity watches. We listen to every distress call. We remember every cruelty. And when the innocent suffer and no one else answers, we will come again. 1 week later, the human fleet departed. They left behind medical supplies, construction equipment, food stores, and trained personnel to help the rebuild. They took nothing. Watch from the surface as the massive ships rose into the sky. One by one, they activated their strange FTL drives and vanished into the void. Within minutes, the skies above Prime were empty again. But this time, the silence did not feel lonely. It felt like a promise. Across the galaxy, the story spread. The Dominion to their core systems, their power broken by a single battle. The galactic concordance fell into chaos as species questioned every alliance and treaty. And everywhere, beings looked toward the distant region of space where humanity lived and wondered what else the humans were hiding. Some feared them, some admired them, some began to seek their friendship. But everyone remembered the lesson of Prime. When the darkness comes and all voices fall silent, look to the void, because somewhere out there humanity is listening. And they will answer.